It wasn't my war. It was Biden's war. It's not my war. I'm trying to get you out of it. U.S. President Donald Trump made this statement while announcing additional weapons support for Ukraine, along with an ultimatum: 50 days for Russia to come to the negotiating table or face severe sanctions. Will Trump's 50-day ultimatum be enough to force Moscow to rethink its calculations? From Trump's tough rhetoric and the skeptical reactions of the Russian people to the cautious hopes of Ukrainians, all will be covered in this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the hottest international stories every day. On July 14th, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius began a visit to Washington to meet with his U.S. counterpart, Pete Hegseth, to discuss critical security issues, including arms support for Ukraine, missile deployment in Germany, and the future of U.S. forces in Europe. Speaking after the meeting, Pistorius stated that Germany and the U.S. would decide on sending U.S.-made Patriot missile systems to Ukraine within days or weeks.
I would like to inform you that a letter of request has gone out to Washington today for the procurement of long-range Typhoon weapon systems. As you know, in simple terms, these are land-based launchers that can fire various missiles at different distances. But the decisive factor is that the range of these weapon systems is significantly greater than that which we have in Europe to date. This means that Germany can significantly increase its own defense and standoff capabilities, but also those of Europe, and that is of crucial importance. We need a bridging technology, and that's why this interim solution is important for us, to build a bridge between the temporary deployment of medium-range missiles in Germany, announced by the old administration, and the completion of the development of our own European systems. This is exactly what Typhoon is for. That is the plan behind it. I spoke to Pete Hegseth about this topic a few weeks ago on the phone, and during the conversation, I suggested that Germany could buy 2 Patriot systems from the Americans and deliver them directly to Ukraine. Quite simply out of the consideration that, in view of our situation concerning delivery and maintenance of the Patriots, we are not in a position to hand over another system, but are prepared to buy 2 such systems in view of the necessity, which we all cannot ignore, that Ukraine needs more systems. But we must not have any illusions. A Patriot system that we now say should go to Ukraine will take months before it can be delivered. So we are now talking about days, perhaps weeks, until a decision is made, but then it will happen very quickly. It is pointless to discuss now whether 50 days is enough or too long. I think that's a period of time that you can operate with, which at the same time, shall we say, really gives you room to maneuver, to act in one direction or the other, and to show or definitively prove whose brainchild he is or what he really wants. But then, it depends, and I believe is a decisive factor, that if Putin does not behave as expected, then the consequences in the form of clear sanctions in the form described will also be imposed on the relevant supporters.
Just before the meeting between Pistorius and Hegseth, U.S. President Donald Trump announced a new weapons aid package for Ukraine while threatening to impose new sanctions on parties purchasing Russian exports unless Moscow agrees to sign a peace deal within 50 days. In what is seen as a significant policy shift, Trump told the press that he was disappointed with Russian President Vladimir Putin, while affirming that billions of dollars in U.S. weapons would be transferred to Ukraine.
And one of the reasons that you're here today is to hear that we are very unhappy, I am, with Russia. But we'll discuss that maybe a different day. But we're very, very unhappy with them, and we're going to be doing very severe tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. Tariffs at about 100%. You'd call them secondary tariffs. You know what that means. But today we're going to talk about something else. And as you know, we've spent $350 billion approximately on this war with Russia and Ukraine, and would like to see it end. It wasn't my war, it was Biden's war. It's not my war, I'm trying to get you out of it. And we want to see it end. And I'm disappointed in President Putin because I thought we would have had a deal 2 months ago, but it doesn't seem to get there. So based on that, we're going to be doing secondary tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. It's very simple. And they'll be at 100%. And that's the way it is. It can be more simple. It's just the way it is. I hope we don't have to do it. Which is more than $1 trillion a year, so they have a lot of money. And these are wealthy nations. And we make the best equipment, the best missiles, the best of everything. The European nations know that. And we've made a deal today, and I'm going to have Mark speak about it, but we've made a deal today where we are going to be sending them weapons and they're going to be paying for them. The United States will not be having any payment made. We're not buying it, but we will manufacture it and they're going to be paying for it. Our last meeting of a month ago was very successful in that they agreed to 5%, which is more than $1 trillion a year, so they have a lot of money. And these are wealthy nations. They have a lot of money, and they want to do it. They feel very strongly about it, and we feel strongly about it, too. But we're in for a lot of money, and we don't want to do anymore, and we can't. But we make the best, and we're going to be sending the best to NATO, and in some cases to maybe, at Mark's suggestion, if we go to Germany, where they're going to send early on missiles, and they'll be replaced, and NATO is going to take care of it. It's going to be coordinated by NATO, and they're going to work very much with Matt Whitaker, who's right here, who's a great ambassador, and Matt's going to be coordinating. You better do a good job, Matt.
I will.
But Matt's going to coordinate. He's a very talented guy. He's going to coordinate everything.
William B. Taylor, former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine and senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, told Reuters that President Trump is now taking tough measures to compel Putin to negotiate, aiming to achieve a ceasefire and end the conflict.
Well, I think President Trump has figured out that President Putin has been stringing him along, has been tapping him along, as President Trump has said earlier, that President Putin is not serious about any kind of an agreement, a ceasefire. President Trump had thought he might be. And I think the combination of a recognition that Putin is not a friend, that Putin is the problem, Putin is the obstacle to what President Trump is trying to do on ending this war, and the humanitarian concern about the effect of these bombardments, nightly bombardments on Ukraine. I think that combination is what has changed. Ukrainians do have Patriot missile systems, and they know how to use them. They use them very well. They use them very effectively. They know the value of these Patriot systems and others. So they're very eager to get more of them because they don't have enough. I think President Trump has indicated that, and with Secretary General, the NATO Secretary General, that European nations have some Patriot systems. And those Patriot systems from European nations fairly close by can get quickly into Ukraine. And the Europeans will then buy replacements from the United States manufacturers. So this works out very well for all concerned. But it also allows these Patriot systems to get into Ukraine quickly. The Americans and the Europeans are teaming up in a mutually beneficial way, teaming up to supply the Ukrainians with the weapons that they need over the longer term. So Putin is going to have to realize over the 50 days or sooner that he's not winning and can't win, and he can't wait us out. That's his only strategy. But his only strategy is try to wait out the Ukrainians, or wait out the Europeans, or wait out the Americans. Well, these sanctions and these weapons demonstrate to Putin that he can't wait us out. And then he may have to come to the table and strike a deal. I think this will increase the unity in NATO. NATO now will be unified against Russia. The support for Ukraine that has been indicated today by the Secretary General and by the President is stronger than it has been in the past 6 months. And the NATO summit last month was another indication coming from President Trump, as well as all the other NATO leaders, that NATO is unified against Russia and in support of Ukraine, and that continues today. Finally, President Trump recognizes that President Putin is the problem, is the obstacle, President Putin is keeping President Trump from solving this problem. So President Trump is now taking these strong actions to push Putin to come to the table to try to get to a ceasefire and an end to this war.
Moscow residents have reacted with skepticism and concern to U.S. President Donald Trump's threat to impose secondary sanctions on Russia while announcing a new weapons aid package for Ukraine.
First of all, Donald Trump is a man who is doing politics mixed with show business, and what he says should always be questioned because he is a very emotional person. The fact that it is possible to reimpose tougher sanctions, it may be, but when they talk about 50 days, I doubt it. I don't even know when it might happen. I sometimes have the feeling that this is such a new reality, which is in some kind of dystopia, as if it will go on and on. Although, of course, I would like a quick resolution of this conflict, and of course, I would not want to compromise Russia's interest in this case.
We have already gone through the most difficult moments for our country and have fully adapted to everything. And no matter who imposes any sanctions on our country, it won't really matter to us anymore. That is some kind of secondary, primary, tertiary, I think. We don't care anymore.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian citizens expressed cautious optimism regarding U.S. President Donald Trump's commitment to providing weapons aid.
I am pleased that finally European politicians, with their patience and convictions, have slightly swayed him to our side, because from the very beginning it was clear that he did not really want to help us. And here, finally, these are some steps, because in the previous months he only promised, and never kept his word. I really hope that these 50 days that he gave Putin, again, that this will not be like another 2-3 weeks he constantly gave him, that this will finally be real pressure on Russia. Therefore, it is wonderful that his life has led to the fact that he changed his position, and for Ukraine it is better.
For us, this is vitally important. For us, it is very necessary. But again, it is necessary to focus on actions, not words. Because we have already heard about stopping the war in 24 hours. But the issue of weapons is really important for us today. If this is really renewed, then it is great. In fact, we have already heard about this, because this is not the first Trump statement regarding sanctions related to the Russian Federation. And it seems to me that these 50 days are some additional advantage for some political restructuring, in particular in favor of America, because America obviously sees some benefits in cooperation with Russia. And Trump does not abandon those thoughts, that he and Putin will somehow be able to have economic benefits.
Observers know that the U.S. resuming military aid to Ukraine, increasing sanctions pressure on Russia, and urging Europe to bolster air defense support indicate a clear shift in the White House leader's approach to the war he once believed could be resolved in a single day.